After a few months, he told the world that he was fighting back from a disease like cancer. On August 20th, 2025, he was seen on the hospital bed, and in the video he was seen appealing to his fans for prayers. The next day, on August 21st, 2025, he left this world forever. Behind him, he has left the memories of the courtroom, from which we get the lesson of being sympathetic, kind, and just. I hope you will like and share this video. Thank you very much for your loving comments. But that woman was very stubborn and said, "No matter what you do, I will not pay." On the first day, Judge Frank Caprio got angry, and he put a boot on his car and dismissed the case. That is, now his car will not be able to run until the fine is paid. After the court session, Tupp scolded Frank a lot. He said, "How will that woman leave her children to go to school, or how will she go to buy groceries?" On the first day, Tupp had a bruise on his forehead and he was not happy. This day proved the turning point of Frank Caprio's life. After that, he decided that if he had to make a decision against any defendant, he would first know how this decision would affect his family. He said that his father's scolding taught him what he could not even learn in law college. For 5 years. After that, Judge Frank Caprio made a donation fund, which he named his mother, Philomena Fund. This fund would help those in need who could not pay the fines. Judge Frank Caprio's fame made a TV program called Caught in Providence. The story behind it is that the judge's brother Joe was very fond of video shooting. He used to make videos of different things, but he was always looking for a good scene to capture. One day, someone gave him an idea to record the proceedings of the courtroom. Judge Frank Caprio was very opposed to this idea, but Joe somehow convinced him. The name of the show was Caught in Providence, which ran on local cable TV. Because of being a judge, Frank Caprio could not even take any fees in return. Earlier, this show ran only on local TV, but after social media came, its copies were also uploaded on the internet, and now these proceedings were seen all over the world. In this way, Judge Caprio showed his mercy and sympathy not only to the people of Providence, but also became famous as the nicest judge in the world. After managing this position for 38 years, Judge Frank Caprio resigned in January 2023. One day, on his way back from law college, one of his classmates gave him a lift home. Frank lived in a clapboard apartment which was very bad from the outside. Frank's classmate saw his house and said, "If you want to be a successful lawyer, you can't live in a house like this." At that time, Frank felt very bad, but he said thank you without answering him and left. But he could not forget this for the rest of his life. After becoming a lawyer, he also took a step in politics. And once he was also standing in the election of Attorney General. But the opposing party accused him of organized crime and cut him off. After that, he started practicing his law again. One day, Frank Caprio was having lunch. Suddenly, he got a phone call from the mayor of the city. He told Frank that one of the 3 municipal court judges of Providence has been transferred, and now one seat is vacant. Frank did not understand why the mayor was telling him this at this time, to which the mayor said, "I think you will be perfect for this post." Frank had never seen a happier moment than this before. It was not just for Frank, but it was a proud moment for both his parents. Frank Caprio had also been a wrestling champion, and whenever he had a match, his father Tupp was always there to watch his match. Similarly, when Frank became a judge, Tupp was also there to see his court proceedings on the first day. The first case was of a woman who had parking tickets worth hundreds of dollars. As soon as she arrived, she started misbehaving with Judge Frank Caprio. She said, "I will not pay this fine. I have children and I have to bear their expenses." Judge Frank Caprio put her on the payment plan, that is, now she will be able to pay in installments. The situation was so bad that in winter nights, he didn't even have a blanket to fly up. The milk company only gave 1 blanket, and it was put on the milk so that it would not freeze. Frank Caprio and his brother shared the same blanket at night. Now, because the blanket was covered with milk cream, a rat used to come to eat that cream every day, and Frank Caprio was very scared. At the age of 16, one day Frank Caprio's father put his hand on his shoulder and said, "One day you will become a lawyer, but remember what I say, do not take fees from the poor." At that time, Frank studied in high school and did a lot of part-time work to make ends meet. He worked as a milk delivery man with his father, distributed newspapers, put pins in a bowling alley, worked as a waiter in a restaurant, and even polished people's shoes by sitting on the side of the road. After high school, he got admission to a college in Providence. In those days, it was a big deal to reach college for a poor family. Among his 45 cousins, Frank Caprio was the second to reach college. In the last year of college, he applied to Boston Law University, which was his dream, but studying at this university meant that he would have to leave all his part-time jobs. And if he had to do that, how would he survive? He got admission to that university, but Frank knew very well that his parents would not be able to afford this university. So instead of going to his favorite university, he did a teaching job during the day and started studying law at another university at night. During this time, Frank Caprio had another incident that he could not forget for the rest of his life. And I try my best not to hurt them in any way. Frank Caprio's father's real name was Antonio Caprio Jr., but everyone called him Tup. When Frank Caprio's father came to America, he lived in a one-bedroom flat where there was no hot water, 12 people in one room, and only one light bulb. He had to leave school in the 7th grade, and he started helping his father, Frank's grandfather, run the family's expenses. The condition of this family was so bad that often cotton was collected in an empty pocket, but Frank Caprio wrote that he didn't even have cotton in his pockets. On November 24, 1936, Frank Caprio was born, and he started living in the same cold water and one-bedroom house with his father Tup and mother Filomena. If he ever had to take a shower, he had to go many kilometers away. His father Tup tried to set up many stalls, but due to Great Depression, none of them worked. Finally, he got a job distributing milk, and from an early age, Frank Caprio also started helping him. Once, when Frank was 8 years old, he had to deliver milk to a house. This house belonged to a rich man whose son was Frank's schoolmate. Early in the morning, when Frank Caprio knocked on the door of the house with an empty stomach, a strong smell of toast came from inside. When the door opened, his schoolmate was sitting on the breakfast table and crying. Frank thought that maybe he would call him in for breakfast, but on the contrary, at that time he was being scolded by his father. His father pointed to his crying son, Frank, and said, "Thank you, you are lucky. Otherwise, you would have been picking up milk in the snow like this boy." Little Frank Caprio felt so bad that after 80 years, he wrote it in his book, Hoo-Bah-Hoo. But there was one thing that Frank Caprio spent his childhood in a very difficult situation, but he was very happy with his life because he got such a upbringing. In the court of Judge Frank Caprio, a woman appeared and started misbehaving with the judge. The woman said, "I will not pay the fine, do whatever you want." The judge said that he will make a payment plan for her, which will make it easier for her to pay the fine. But the woman's attitude was very rude, and she said, "Do whatever you want. I will not pay." Anyway, Judge Frank Caprio, who is known to the world for his compassion and compassion, got angry for the first time in the courtroom. This court proceeding was not published anywhere, but Frank Caprio has certainly mentioned it in his book. And what happened after that changed Frank Caprio's life forever. Welcome to another video. Once again, viewers, who would have thought that a child who polishes people's shoes along with going to school would one day get the nickname of the world's nicest judge? It is quite difficult to guess by looking at the court rulings of Frank Caprio that how deep wounds are hidden behind this smiling face, compassion and compassion. Frank Caprio was the chief judge of the Providence Municipal Court in the city of Rhode Island. From 1985 to 2023, he served 38 years in this position. His identity was made from a reality TV show, Caught in Providence. There were cases related to traffic violations in his court, wrong parking, overspeeding, or breaking signals. But Frank Caprio always made fun of the accused, smiled at them, and tried to solve them by giving them a fine. Sometimes he would get the defendants to come and get the rulings from the children, and there would be a fun atmosphere in the courtroom. Sometimes he would hug the accused himself and try to share his pain. One day, an old man of 96 years came to his court, who was accused of overspeeding in the school zone. When the judge asked him why he was overspeeding, the old man's eyes were wet. He said that he was taking his 63-year-old son to the hospital because he had blood cancer. Frank Caprio wished the old man without wasting time and dismissed the case without a fine. His positive attitude was not only appreciated in America but also in the whole world. In fact, judges from other countries have also accepted Frank Caprio as their ideal. But there is a painful story behind this smiling face, which brought him to a point that he never even imagined. In 2023, after his retirement, he was diagnosed with cancer, and during this time he started writing his book Compassion in the Court, which was published in 2025. There is an interesting incident behind Judge Frank Caprio's attitude, which happened to his grandparents. His grandparents were completely illiterate when they migrated from Italy and came to Providence City. Their situation was so bad that the grandfather used to live with a bag of fruits. One day he got drunk with his friends and the police caught him. Frank Caprio's grandmother took a loan from her neighbor and went to court and offered money to the judge in front of everyone to get her husband released. That too in signs and broken English. At that time, his younger son Tup was with him, who knew a little English. The judge called Tup to himself and said, "Take your parents home. They have been released." When Tup told this to his mother, she returned praying to the judge. This little boy was none other than Judge Frank Caprio's father, who was called Tup in love. Frank Caprio said, "Even though this case happened long before I was born, but listening to the story of that judge's behavior, I still remember my grandparents when I see immigrants in my court.